If you grew up playing Minecraft around 2013 to 2015, it's very likely that you've heard about the Minecraft Handbooks. This was a series of 4 books released in 2013 with revisions released in 2015. When I was younger, I was extremely excited to see each of these in my book fair, so I got all 4 of them as soon as I could. That's right, these books did the impossible. They got me to read. Not even the FNAF books could do that. Essentially, these 4 books acted as sort of guidebooks for how to play Minecraft. The original focused on the survival mode basics, the combat book focused on fighting other mobs and players, the redstone book focused on making contraptions, and the construction book focused on how to improve a player's builds. Each of these were so much fun to flip through, as they were filled with so many pieces of information along with fun visuals to help make the experience more enjoyable. But you know what else these books were filled with? Lies. In my previous Minecraft video discussing useless facts for the game, I mentioned a couple errors I and another commenter had regarding a few of these books. In that video, I also asked if you all would be interested in seeing me do a deep dive into every error I could find in these things, and it's safe to say that almost everyone wanted me to make this video. So today, I'm going to be taking a look at the Minecraft Essential Handbook in order to correct every single piece of misinformation I could find. There was quite a bit. By my count, there was well over 50 errors. With that being said, I still really like these books. I could have got something much worse. We're only going to be covering the first book today, and I'll be looking through the 2015 updated edition, since that's the one I own, and it makes more sense to see what errors persisted even after a revision. If you all enjoyed this video, I'll definitely make more episodes on the other 3 books in the future. Also keep in mind that this is going to be a very actually coded video, as even if the error is something small, I still wanted to cover everything I could. There's also a chance I may have missed something while flipping through, but I'm pretty confident that I got most of the major errors. Additionally, for the sake of book copyright, I'm not going to be showing off every page in this video, and the ones I do show will have some information blurred out if it's not relevant to the segment. This video is not meant as a replacement for buying the books themselves, and any image I show is just for transformative review purposes. With that said, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and let's jump right in. For the sake of this video, we're going to be going through each of these errors in page order. Now don't freak out, but we have a total of 95 pages to look at today. I know, way more than any of you have ever read. Don't worry though, not every page has an error. With that said, our first 2 pages have errors. Now we have 2 different types of errors we'll be discussing in this video. The first of which are obviously just mistakes, things that are completely wrong and not true in the actual game of Minecraft. The second set of errors are things that were true in the book released, but have since become outdated as Minecraft is an ever-updating game. The latest update that was out when this book was released was 1.8 The Bountiful Update. So obviously flipping through this, you aren't going to find any references to stuff like the Sulfur Cube. Our first 2 pages of real information here, pages 6 and 7, have an example of each of our 2 error types. Page 6 has a sentence that reads, "There are achievements to earn as you progress through the game." While on Bedrock Edition this would still be true, for Java Edition we no longer have achievements. Instead, those got replaced by advancements in 1.12, which yes, are very similar, but is technically something else. We're definitely starting this video off on a small one, but don't worry, these errors will get much more absurd as we go on. As for our first true mistake, page 7 writes that Jeb became the Minecraft lead developer in 2012. However, every source that I can find says that he actually became the lead developer in December of 2011. Yes, that's obviously very close, but still slightly incorrect. Like I said, very actually coded today. Anyway, before we move on to the next page, notice how I didn't say the word Twitter is outdated. That's because nobody calls it X. The next section of the book takes us through some of Minecraft's history. While pages 8 and 9 seem to be okay in terms of errors, it'd be hard to make a mistake on a blank page, 10 and 11 do have some minor mistakes. First off, for some outdated information, under the 2012 box, it stated that cats were added in the 1.2.1 update. That's because at the time, you could tame ocelots to turn them into cats. However, this has since changed, and cats became an entirely separate mob in 2019 with the Village and Pillage update. Again, this isn't technically incorrect for the time, but from a modern perspective, it is worth noting. As for another very minor tweak, the hardened clay and stained clay blocks listed in the 2013 box were later renamed to terracotta in the 1.12 update. Now for the actual errors on these pages, we do have a bit of weirdness when it comes to the dates again. I promise you, these are the last errors relating to date stuff. In the 2013 box again, the 1.6 update, aka the horse update, is said to have released in July. This is a bit of a weird one. The update labeled 1.6 actually released on the 25th of June in 2013 instead of July. However, the update labeled 1.6 was actually not the full release of the horse update. Instead, that was 1.6.1, which was released on July 1st. So you could take the error here as either the wrong month being used or the wrong number. Other releases that came out on more specific version numbers like 1.2.1 and 1.7.2 are listed on this page, so they absolutely could have listed 1.6.1 if they wanted to be fully accurate. As for a more clear-cut error, the 2014 box lists that the 1.8 update released in August, when it actually came out on September 2nd. Now, I think this error is pretty interesting, as it goes alongside a few of the others we'll be seeing in a bit regarding content that revolves around the 1.8 update. Despite this updated edition releasing in July of 2015, over 10 months after the updates, I believe it was written alongside the update's development. As we go through the book, we'll be seeing a lot more evidence of this, so I believe this error may show that Mojang's original intention for the release date was in August, but it had to be delayed a couple days. Keep in mind though, that's just a theory. A book theory. Finally freeing ourselves from timeline nonsense, we can talk about the actual game itself. No, wait, hold on, we gotta figure out where we're playing first. Page 12 lists several options for devices to play Minecraft on, such as a computer, Xbox and PlayStation consoles, and pocket devices. Now, if you're part of my audience, you might have noticed a very important omission. Mario is missing. After the release of this book, Nintendo finally allowed Minecraft onto their consoles with the Wii U and pretty much everything else since. This is just another outdated thing, but it's worth a mention that Nintendo consoles should be on this list too. Also, before we move on to page 13, I think it's kind of funny how this page suggests new players starting on normal mode instead of easy. Like, it's basically saying you gotta be a real loser to play on easy mode. Don't even get me started on peaceful. Anyway, page 13 actually lets us dive into the game itself with its explanation of the experience system. The first issue I have is in the level box, which reads, "Experience points are earned when you mine items and kill monsters." This is absolutely true, but it's not a full picture of everything that gives you XP. Smelting, fishing, trading, breeding, and bottles of enchanting could all also give experience as well. Advancements would also later give experience, but that was after this book's release. However, the bigger and much more important error on this page comes from our very first Did You Know box of the entire book. These are littered everywhere in the handbook to give random pieces of information, but sadly, a lot of them are giving out misinformation. This first box reads, "Did you know? There are 17 experience points to each of the first 16 levels of the game. Once you reach level 17, the number of points needed to rank up increases with each level you achieve, making progress more difficult." While the second half about it getting harder as you go is true, the first half of this box is entirely false. From levels 0 to 15, the amount of experience required to reach the next level is determined by the formula 2 times the current level plus 7. So if you're at level 0, you would need 7 XP to get to level 1, and then from there you'd need 9 to get to level 2, and so on and so forth. Now, I know a lot of you aren't good at math, but 7 isn't equal to 9, and both of those aren't equal to 17. So yeah, every level in this game actually requires a different amount of XP to reach it. If you're wondering where they got this 17 number from in the first place, this text box is actually describing how the system used to work before 1.8. However, since this book came out after 1.8, it really should have listed the new system. Moving on to the control section of the book, this was mostly pretty well put together as far as I can tell. The pixelated artwork for all of the different devices and controllers are really cute here. The only real thing I find worth mentioning in this section is our second Did You Know box. The first line reads, "There's a 3D mode." 3D mode is dead! Yeah, this feature was sadly removed in 1.13, and according to the wiki, it's likely because it was very underutilized. So at least this feature did still exist at the time of this book's release, but from a modern lens, the Did You Know boxes are currently 0 for 2 in giving actual information. That moves us on to the inventory section, which doesn't have any true errors, but does have a couple outdated pieces of information. Thanks to the offhand introduced in 1.9, we can now have 28 slots in our inventory instead of just 27 as listed in the book. Hopefully we can get more in that inventory update, right, Mojang? Please, Mojang? Then at the bottom of page 18, we have... Yup, our third Did You Know box in a row has some more outdated information for us. It reads, crafting is trickier on PC/Mac edition than on console or pocket editions. The console and pocket editions tell you what you can make with the items you have, but on PC or Mac, you have to figure it out yourself. Thanks to the recipe book introduced in the 1.12 update, Java Edition will now also give the player a list of recipes. I'm always very thankful that they added that, but in the case of this book, the over 3 Did You Know streak is pretty tragic. One more thing before we move out of this section, the tip box tells us about how important it is to organize your hotbar. This is indeed a very important part of the game, as it'll make your life a whole lot easier when trying to do basically anything. But their example of a good hotbar is terrible. What the hell? Following the inventory section, we actually get quite a few pages that didn't seem to have any real errors. Even the next Did You Know box actually locked in and gave us a fact that's still true to this day. So our next stop is going to be page 27, which talks about torches. The error here is really small, as it states that torches can't be placed on the sides of stairs. That is mostly true, though you can place torches on the solid side. I think that is what they meant by this, but I could see someone new to the game being confused, thinking torches don't work on stairs at all. While we're here, I also wanted to take a look at the tip box, as it reads, you can use torches to melt snow and ice to create a safe path. Now it is true that you can melt ice and snow layers, but I'm just confused on the last part. Create a safe path? A safe path through what? What does that mean? It's not like snow or ice are dangerous, so what does melting them have to do with making a safe path? The only danger I can think of is if you're really worried about slipping. Our next page of interest is page 30, which discusses how to craft and use stone tools. However, if you look at the bottom of this page, one of these tools aren't like the others. For some reason, they show an iron pickaxe here instead of stone. Obviously, obtaining an iron pickaxe is possible in-game, but considering this page is only about stone tools, I can only assume this is a mistake in the graphic. Also, right above that picture of the hotbar, we get another pretty weird sentence that reads, save your tools in your hotbar for easy access, then check out all the experience points you've earned as a result of your crafting spree. The way this is worded makes it seem like crafting gave the player XP, which doesn't happen in the main game. They could be referring to the XP gained from smelting iron ore for the pickaxe they have, but if that's the case, this whole page is structured very poorly as it doesn't introduce crafting an iron pickaxe at all. As for a couple more small things, the stone shovel graphic is shown upside down for some reason, while the wooden shovel on page 25 was normal. And with the introduction of netherite tools, diamond is no longer the most effective and durable tool type. Also, since they don't really explain what effective means, you could technically argue that gold is better if you're looking for the fastest tool set. Personally though, I wouldn't really call that a mistake. Page 32 is all about health and food, though they do explain something incorrectly. The Did You Know box at the bottom of the page reads, it's impossible to be greedy and overeat in Minecraft, so don't even try. You won't be able to eat food when your food bar is full or if you're playing in creative mode. You can only eat when you need to fill up your food bar. While yes, basic foods like steak won't get eaten if your hunger bar is full, there are exceptions to the rule. At the time of this book's release, golden apples could be eaten while full. Since then, we have also gotten chorus fruit, honey bottles, and suspicious stew, which can also be eaten when their hunger bar is full. I just find it funny how this text box explicitly says, don't even try. That could prevent someone from discovering the ability to eat golden apples while full, which can be a crucial mechanic to get you out of danger. As for the creative mode part of this box, 1.15 introduced the ability to eat any food while in creative, so now you can eat as much as you want. That seems pretty greedy. Our next couple pages go into a bit more detail about specific food types, so we're going to be stuck with food errors for a little bit longer here. In the meat section, pork chop is interestingly written with a space between pork and chop, whereas in-game it's just one word. Now I don't know if this should technically be classed as an error because all of my research seems to point to both spellings of pork chop being correct, so I guess it's really more accurate to call this an inconsistency rather than an error. I also wanted to point out while we're on this page that the mutton and rabbit textures here aren't the ones that are used in-game. They're both taken from the 1.8 snapshots, but before the update's full release, they were each changed to a completely different texture. Once again, this goes well with my theory that this book was written alongside 1.8's development. Next up on the fishing page, we have a few clarification errors. First off, it says that there are 3 types of edible fish: raw salmon, and clownfish. Now this is technically true if your definition of edible is able to be eaten safely, but if your definition is closer to able to be eaten at all, all, then technically the pufferfish should also be here, even if it does make you super sick afterwards. As for the act of fishing itself, the first paragraph of this page states, to catch a fish, all you need is a fishing rod and a boat. Boats are not a requirement for fishing. While I'm not necessarily sure that's what they were trying to say, I could see someone taking the sentence to mean boats are required. Speaking of the fishing rod though, there is a minor mistake when it comes to its durability. While you do have 65 uses of a fishing rod on Java Edition, Bedrock Edition gives you 300... Yeah, I didn't know about that before making this video, but the Bedrock Edition fishing rods are way beefier than the Java ones. These parity differences just get weirder and weirder. Also, real quick before we move on to the next page, it's also worth noting that the raw fish and clownfish were later replaced by the raw cod and tropical fish in 1.13. They function identically to their versions in the book though, so it's not really a big deal. Our next set of pages focuses on fruit, vegetables, and baked goods. For the most part, these pages were all fine, though it is worth noting that the bucket can now hold much more than just water, lava, and milk on recent versions. Plenty of mobs and powdered snow can now also be picked up by a bucket. The pages after this talking about beds also don't have any errors, though I do find it funny how it suggests killing a sheep with a pickaxe of all things instead of a sword. The crafting recipe shown would also make a white bed in modern Minecraft, but since the red bed was all that existed back in 1.8, it makes sense to be here. The table of blocks on the next page though is where we really get to see some of our bigger errors again. First off, where's the block of surprise? Okay, but seriously, this page contains possibly the biggest error of the book so far. If we take a look at the text box with the stone pickaxe, it reads, most of these blocks can be mined and picked up, but air, water, fire, lava, cobweb, bedrock, and monster spawner can't. One of these blocks shouldn't be here.
You're not supposed to be here.
Cobwebs are very much able to be mined and picked up. This isn't even a modern Minecraft inclusion either. This has been the case ever since the 1.4.6 update in 2012, well before even the initial release of this book. Sure, it required silk touch on shears at the time, but that was not that hard to obtain in survival mode. So saying you can't pick up cobwebs is just a flat out lie. There's no other way of looking at it. As for the other blocks like the monster spawner and bedrock, I'm sure you could technically pick them up using glitches, but I'm not going to count that as an error. Speaking of the monster spawner though, I do find it interesting that they show it off with a pig spawner here. It makes sense because that was the default spawner type if you just placed it down in creative mode, though for a survival guide, I'm kind of surprised they didn't change it to show a zombie or something. Another weird texture comes from the dirt block, as taking a closer look at it reveals that this is for some reason using the farmland texture rather than the standard dirt texture. You can tell by looking at the top of the block. This one definitely feels like a mistake, especially since farmland has its own separate spot on the table. Wait, technically farmland can't be picked up since it reverts back to dirt when mined. I think that means it should have been in this section instead of cobwebs. Finally, the last error on this packed set of pages comes from tall grass. At the time of this book's release, the item shown here was just known as grass in the Java edition. The only version that I could find calling it tall grass were the legacy console versions. In modern Minecraft, this item is now known as short grass, with the name tall grass being given to this item's double tall variant. Obviously, this isn't as big of an issue compared to some of the other stuff on these pages, but I figured it was still worth a mention. If you thought the table of blocks was bad though, the next set of pages are even worse from a modern perspective. Pages 42 and 43 act as a guide for what the best Y levels are for mining the rare ore types. Yeah, this entire guide is completely irrelevant thanks to the Caves and Cliffs updates, so I think we're just gonna move past it. Moving by a couple more pages brings us to the book's largest section, the overview of all the mobs. Here we'll find detailed explanations for basically every single overworld mob. While a lot of these are quite helpful, this is also where we're going to find most of our errors today. Many of these come from missing information rather than just being flat out wrong though. As an example, the chicken is listed as dropping eggs, but it's put alongside the drops you get for killing a chicken. It really should have been explained that chickens lay eggs over time and not on death. Many of the more specific drops, like a cow's milk bucket, explain how you have to get the item outside of just murder. So I could see someone getting the wrong idea and killing a bunch of chickens in hopes that one eventually drops an egg. The chicken is also the only meat mob that doesn't list its cooked variant as a drop, though I'm guessing that was done since it wouldn't really fit anywhere in this box. Speaking of the cow, the mushroom entry neglects the fact that it can be milked just like a cow. It does at least include the mushroom stew drop, but there's a perfectly open spot for the milk bucket too, so they definitely could have added it. Also weirdly enough, this was in the original release of this book, but they decided to remove this in the updated version. No clue why. Our next mob, the rabbit, is one of 3 mobs in this book to neglect the fact that they drop XP. It should say that it drops 1 to 3 experience points, just like the other farm animals. This could be another case of running out of room like the chicken, though it is interesting that the cooked rabbit got priority this time. Speaking of, this page states that rabbits drop 0 to 1 raw rabbit upon death, but that was actually just a bug. In Java Edition 1.19.3, it was fixed so that rabbits will always drop 1 raw rabbit no matter what. Unless you play Bedrock Edition, for some reason they didn't bother fixing it there. I guess it's to balance out the fishing rod. The pig section after that is all correct, but there is a bit of outdated information in the Did You Know box. It states that saddles can be found in dungeons, abandoned mine shafts, nether fortresses, desert temples, jungle temples, and blacksmith chests. However, after their crafting recipe was introduced in 1.21.6, saddles were removed from all of those structures except for the nether fortress and village. Our next mob is the horse, and its description reads, "Horses, donkeys, and mules can be tamed and are one of the fastest methods of transport around." Clearly, they've never seen an ice boat. The only minor issue I have with their box is just the fact that they don't explain how chests can only go on donkeys or mules. The way the box is structured makes it seem like chests can be dropped by horses, which isn't true. The wolf on the following page gives us one of the most interesting errors of the bunch. If you look at the very bottom, you'll find a picture of a wolf along with the text, "You can put tamed wolves on leads using fishing rods." I'm not sure why they mention fishing rods at all here. All you need to do to lead a dog is use a lead. Even the picture clearly shows the player just using a lead with no fishing rod in sight. My guess is that this was either a leftover from when the only real way to pull mobs was the fishing rod, but leads were introduced in 1.6.1, so they had plenty of time to correct this description to exclude fishing rods. As for a less noticeable issue with the wolves, the Did You Know box states that a tamed wolf will attack whatever you're fighting unless it's a creeper. This one is almost true, but in addition to creepers, wolves will also not attack ghasts. I didn't even know that before double checking this fact though, so I don't blame the writers for that one. The next page is just filled with a few pieces of outdated information, like ocelots being tameable, and bats being, quote, the only passive mobs able to fly. With mobs like parrots existing, this is no longer true. And villagers too. Speaking of, the villager page is almost completely outdated, much like the caves and cliffs page I mentioned before. The villager textures are old, the villager jobs are old, and heck, even the iron golem spawning conditions have changed. At the time of this book's release, it seems like all of this information was true, but from a modern perspective, this page is mostly useless. Page 53 focuses mostly on villager trading tips given from YouTuber Captain Sparkles. I haven't mentioned it until now, but this book contains several anecdotes from both Paul Source Jr. and Captain Sparkles, which I think was a really cute idea. However, the fact that I'm mentioning Captain Sparkles now means that he lied to us.
You were the chosen one! It was said that you would destroy the Sith, not join them!
Basically, the heinous piece of misinformation he spewed comes at the very end of his section. He states, villager trading is the only way to obtain items like chainmail armor and bottles of enchanting in survival mode. While this was true at the time for bottles of enchanting, this was not true for chainmail armor. Both zombies and skeletons could spawn wearing chainmail armor ever since the 1.4.2 update. That means, if you got a chainmail mob to spawn and then killed it, you could get chainmail armor without villager trading. So no, this was not the only method to obtain this equipment. Well, moving past that heartbreaking betrayal, we can go on to the hostile mobs, starting with the Creepus Explodus. This section features 2 issues that are present for many of the other hostile mobs in this book. First off, it states that creepers spawn in areas with a light level of 7 or less. While that is how hostile mobs used to work, ever since the 1.18 update, they only spawn at light level 0. I won't mention that again for every mob, so just keep in mind that the light levels are outdated. Under the drop section, it's also not mentioned that creepers can drop creeper heads if blown up by a charged creeper. I think this would have been a great place to explain that mechanic, especially since it did exist at the time of this book. Maybe if they didn't want to fill up the drop section, they could have put it in the charged creepers Did You Know box. As it is now, the method of attaining a creeper, zombie, and skeleton head is not explained anywhere in this book. Our next hostile mob is the skeleton. From what I can tell, this is the mob to have the most errors out of this entire book. The first of which is the one I mentioned in my useless facts video that came from commenter Dusk Amethyst. Under the weapons section, it's shown that a skeleton can very rarely use an enchanted bow and an enchanted arrow. However, enchanted arrows don't exist in the game. This is made extra weird by the fact that the arrows are given the enchantment glint in the picture, which is again, not possible in survival mode. My guess is that the person working on this page just misunderstood what was meant by enchanted bow and arrow and assumed both were supposed to be enchanted. The next weird thing comes from the Did You Know box. It reads, skeletons can shoot endermen with their arrows, which is something players can't do. No, they can't! Okay, well they can't on Java Edition, at least from all of my testing. Even in 1.8, the Enderman seems to always teleport away if it's shot. However, it looks like they can possibly shoot Endermen on other versions under very rare circumstances, but I've only been able to find a couple recordings of this ever happening. Maybe this is just extremely rare, but it feels like a really weird inclusion in this book if it's version exclusive. The other skeleton errors are not nearly as bad and are mostly just wording mistakes. The drop section says that skeletons give 5 XP, but this isn't fully true. Mobs with naturally spawning equipment will drop 1 to 3 extra XP per armor piece or weapon. Since skeletons always spawn with bows, they'll always drop a minimum of 6 experience instead of just 5. If you include armor, the actual XP drop range for skeletons is 6 to 20 experience points. I think it would have been way more helpful to explain the equipment XP mechanic in the Did You Know box, rather than putting the 1 in a billion Enderman getting shot fact. Finally for the skeleton, the second Did You Know box states that skeletons have the ability to pick up and put on armor, mob heads, pumpkins, and jack-o'-lanterns. While it is possible to see a skeleton wearing all of these items, one of them is problematic.
The jack-o'-lantern.
The only way for a skeleton to be found wearing a jack-o'-lantern is for it to spawn that way on Halloween. If you try giving a skeleton a jack-o'-lantern, they in fact can't pick it up. This one is definitely just an issue of wording, though I could see someone being confused why a skeleton won't wear the jack-o'-lantern they're being given. The other mobs are luckily much less problematic. The only issues with zombies are either things we've already mentioned like the head drop and equipment XP, or outdated information like the lack of lava chicken and mushroom drops for the zombie mounts. As for the spiders, there were a couple pieces of misinformation here. First off, it states the spiders will attack the player if the light level is at 9 or below, but in actuality, they'll attack if it's at 11 or below. So I'm sure this fact has led to someone getting a mild jump scare when they thought they were safe. It's also stated in the second paragraph that spiders are able to see players through walls. Surprisingly, that did actually used to be true, but this was removed in 1.8, meaning by the time of this book's release, that was no longer the case. Also, this isn't really an error, but interestingly enough, the cave spider is the only naturally spawning overworld mob to not get an entry in this book. The snow golem also didn't get an entry either, but that one requires the player to actually build it. That's kind of a weird choice, but they did eventually make up for their mistakes in the combat book. Next up is the Enderman, which has a few strange errors relating to how they spawn. The third paragraph reads, they spawn in pairs, unlike other mobs, and can often be spotted at night in groups of up to 5. I'm not sure why they say unlike other mobs, as every other main hostile mob is able to spawn in a group. If they mean specifically in pairs of 2, that's not true either, as the Endermen, as far as I can tell, spawn in groups of 1 to 4. That's also less than the group of 5 count given by this book, but I guess you could find multiple groups bunched together. Personally though, I don't think I have ever seen 5 Endermen together in the overworld, especially not often like this book claims. Also, while we're here, when I went to fact check on the wiki, I typed pair into Control F, and the only thing that popped up on the page was... I have no clue why an Enderman wearing a pair of pants is on the wiki, but it's very awesome. Moving on to the Enderman's arch nemesis, we have the Endermite. This was a new mob introduced in the 1.8 update, so they just barely made the cut to be in this book. However, this mob changed quite a bit throughout 1.8's development, and since it seems like this updated edition was written at the same time, a lot of the facts here were eventually removed or changed by this update's full release. We were so close to getting this model in the book. The first of these removed facts facts comes from this passage, which mentions endermites having a 15% chance to spawn when an enderman teleports. While this did used to be the case in the snapshot versions, this was eventually removed in 1.8's full release. That means the only way to spawn these guys is by teleporting as the player. The other changed fact comes from the how to kill section, which says that you can suffocate endermites by having them walk onto soul sand. This one was actually true at the time of the book's release. However, soul sand's ability to suffocate mobs like endermites and silverfish was removed in 1.15. Even if this was a super niche feature, I do kinda think it was a cool way to kill these guys, so I'm a little bit sad about this removal. While on the topic of both the endermite and silverfish, their pages state that they deal 2 and 1 damage per hit respectively. This is true on normal mode, but hard mode makes it so that they can actually deal 3 and 1.5 damage respectively. Obviously that's not the biggest problem in the world, but I think it is worth mentioning. The final error from these 2 pages though is definitely the biggest, but funnily enough, it doesn't really have anything to do with these mobs. The Did You Know section talks a bit about the name tag, since they prevent endermites from despawning. First off, it states that the name tag can't be crafted, which is now outdated thanks to the tiny takeover. The real issue though is the fact that it completely fails at explaining how to use a name tag. The box reads, to attach, select it in your hotbar and use it on your chosen endermite, then type in a name. This is just not how a name tag is used at all. You can't attach a name tag and then type in a name. You have to rename the tag in an anvil first. Only then can you attach it to the mob of your choice. I have no clue how they messed up the order of this explanation so badly. I mean, they don't even mention an anvil at all here. Our next mob, the slime, are luckily very quick, as the only error I could find is that the book claims that they can see players through blocks like the spider. I can't find when this was removed or if the slime could ever even do this, but they don't seem to be able to look through walls now. Unfortunately, the other main swamp mob, the witch, is a bit more of an issue. The Did You Know box states, witches are the only silent hostile mob. Yep, you can't hear them coming. Yeah, on the 1.9 update, witches got noises, making this fact no longer true. Earlier in the page, it also talks about the witch's ability to drink potions, even stating that the witch is the only non-boss mob that can heal. With modern mobs like the LA that use their healing abilities to get tortured, it's obvious that the witch is no longer the only non-boss mob that can heal. However, this was actually not even true by the time of this book's release. The horse, donkey, and mule actually have a 1 in 900 chance to heal themselves every game tick. Sure, it's not as good as drinking a healing potion, but it is them healing themselves. So that means the witch is not alone like it claims to be.
You're never alone when the horses are around.
The other issues I have with the witches section have to do with its potions. First off, the drop section doesn't mention that you can get potions of healing, fire resistance, water breathing, and swiftness if you kill the witch while it's drinking them. That's not a huge deal, but this maybe could have been a nice explanation for the mechanic. The real issues come with the weapon section. For some reason, it shows a potion of healing as a weapon, which I guess a witch does technically use, but calling it a weapon is a bit of a stretch. It's also a bit weird that the potion of harming here isn't shown as a splash potion, since that's actually what the witch is using to deal damage. What I think is even worse is the fact that splash potions of poison, weakness, and slowness are not mentioned anywhere in this section. In my opinion, poison is the scariest part about fighting a witch, so the fact that it's completely absent on this page feels like a big oversight. Especially when they put the potion of healing down here as a weapon. At the very least, I would have mentioned the other potions in the witch's description somewhere. With that, we have finally made it to our last pair of mobs, being the Guardian and Elder Guardian. Luckily, the only errors here come from a lack of information regarding their drops. Not only does it not mention that you can get cooked fish if you kill a Guardian with fire, but Guardians actually drop 0 to 2 raw fish when killed by the player instead of just 0 to 1. If a Guardian dies without player involvement, then yes, they only drop 0 to 1 fish, but for some reason, getting killed by the player makes them drop up to 2. I'm not even sure why that's a mechanic in the first place, so I can't blame the writers too much for missing this. I think the most important omission from these pages though is the XP. Unlike something like the Rabbit that has a very standard 1 to 3 XP drop, the Guardians are one of the few mobs to drop 10 XP. Out of all the mobs included in this book, they're the ones to drop the most XP, which I think would be pretty important to convey to the reader. I'm sure kids have flipped through this looking for the best mob to kill for the most experience. Otherwise, what would be the point of nearly every other mob saying how much XP they drop? This would have been a great place to teach players that Guardians are a really good source of XP if you're able to kill them, so the exclusion of the drop in this case feels like a big mistake to me. Also, speaking of killing these guys, this isn't an error, but look how insane this tip is for fighting an Elder Guardian. Use a fishing rod to pull it out of the water and onto land, where you can hit it with a diamond sword much more easily. Who in their right mind would ever do that? I genuinely want to know if there is anyone out there that was insane enough to fish an Elder Guardian out of a monument to kill on land. If you have actually done this before, please let me know in the comments, so I know to lock you away in this cell. Also, before I forget, the Elder Guardian can also drop the tied armor trim in modern versions, but that item didn't exist when this book was written. With that, we are finally free from the mob section of this book, and we can take a little bit of a break on the next few sections, because they don't seem to have any errors.
Unless Captain Sparkles also lied about his first day in Minecraft.
The next few things I was able to find are on pages 78 and 79 under the farming section. The Did You Know box states that full wheat crops will drop 0 to 3 wheat seeds. However, this was updated in 1.14 to be 1 to 4 seeds instead. Sadly, this is only on Java. For whatever reason, Bedrock still uses the old system. Imagine planting an entire wheat field only to get 0 seeds from it. These 2 pages also give a step-by-step guide on how to farm, though step 3 is a bit odd as it seems to suggest using your pickaxe to mine out strips of dirt. I mean, you can do that if you want, but it's weird that they didn't say shovel here. The last issue from these pages comes from the very end, as this last section reads, growing melons, pumpkins, carrots, and potatoes is very similar to growing wheat. Just plant them in your farmland and wait for them to grow. While yes, carrots and potatoes work basically the exact same as wheat, melons and pumpkins do work quite a bit different. Instead of just growing straight up, they first need to grow a stem that then places a pumpkin or melon block next to them if there's an open spot. If we look at the farm design that they have for wheat, this would be extremely inefficient to grow melons and pumpkins on, as only the 6 spots at the edge would be able to grow anything. So I think saying these two are farmed very similarly to wheat is a bit of a misleading statement. Next up we got the breeding pages, which are mostly fine, but they do have a few incomplete and outdated sections. Cats, for example, are no longer able to be bred using pufferfish or clownfish as of 1.14. I think that's a good change, because feeding anything pufferfish is probably pretty dangerous. Another outdated entry is the chicken, as they were re-given the ability to breed using melon and pumpkin seeds at 1.9, along with gaining the ability to breed with beetroot seeds. Funnily enough, their ability to breed using melon and pumpkin seeds was actually removed in the final 1.8 snapshot, so it's pretty lucky that they only included seeds in this graphic, as it's unlikely that they would have had time to change it before this book was released. Also, fun fact, apparently chickens used to be breedable with nether warts before 1.8 removed that.
Guess the poor chicken jockeys in the nether get to starve now.
Pigs, rabbits, and wolves all have an incomplete list of breeding items even when this book was released. Pigs are also able to be bred using potatoes, along with beetroots after 1.9. Rabbits are also breedable with dandelions and golden carrots. Finally, wolves are breedable with basically every single type of meat in the game, so I understand not including all of them in this page. The final minor error in this breeding section comes from this table depicting what happens when you breed 2 sheep of different colors. The caption reads, "Blue and pink don't mix," but if you look closely, that's clearly a light blue sheep.
Embarrassing!
And with that, we have actually made it to our final section with true errors, though there are a couple oddities that I wanted to mention after this. The armor section gives insight for all of the different armor sets the player can wear, though some of the pieces of info are a little bit off. First off, it mentions that diamond armor is the best type of armor, which is no longer true as of 1.16 thanks to netherite. That also makes the tip box on page 82 incorrect, which says that gold armor is the only armor set that you can obtain from villagers. Netherite is only obtainable through crafting it yourself, making gold not the only armor set not offered by villagers. The bigger error though comes from the tip box on page 83. It reads, your armor bar will automatically appear above your health as soon as you're wearing armor. Keep an eye on it to check how much durability is left on your current armor and make sure you have a replacement set ready for when it gets low. This explanation of the armor bar seems almost entirely incorrect. Nothing about it shows how much durability your armor has left. It only shows how many total defense points you have. In order to check your durability, you have to open your inventory, which doesn't seem to be what this tip is suggesting. The armor bar did used to deplete when the armor lost durability, but this system was removed all the way back in 1.0, so there's no reason for this book to be referencing the super old system. As for some good news in this section though, the Did You Know box right next to this finally corrects Captain Sparkle's lie by mentioning that chainmail can indeed be obtained through mob drops.
Although it says chain can't be crafted, have you tried using fire, buddy?
But that's just about it for the errors in this book, though there were two more small things that I wanted to mention. First off, for some reason, the skin used on page 85 has some weird red and black pixels all over Steve's back. I mean, that might just be a design choice from the graphics person, but come on man, get a better skin than that. And finally, we're gonna end this video the exact same way we started by talking about outdated achievements. On page 94, we get an overview of several achievements to collect in the game. However, as I mentioned, the achievement system got completely overhauled into advancements in 1.12. That also means that many of these achievements were sadly killed off.
While getting an upgrade, Monster Hunter, and acquire hardware all managed to survive the purge, the other 7 weren't so lucky. So let's all say rest in peace to getting wood. Benchmarking. Time to mine. Hot topic. Time to farm. Time to strike. And cow tipper. Their memory will serve as an example to us all.
But anyways, that's it for this video. Is your favorite number 74 and you hate me for not being able to find an error on that page? Let me know in the comments. I had an absurdly fun time with this video. It was so nostalgic reading through this book again. Doing the research for every little detail was also a ton of fun, so hopefully you all enjoyed this as well. As much as I joked about it, I did really love all 4 of these books growing up, so I really hope this video does well so I have an excuse to visit the other 3 in the future. By the way, I did a lot of new things with my editing in this video, so if you have any ideas for how to improve the next episodes when I get to those, feel free to let me know in the comments. But before I go, I've got to thank my members being Guess Who Not, Crazy Dry, Gately, Yokai Watch Deluxe, Spawnzilla, Cuttlefish, Lost Core 58, The Cool Man, Kumo Yasoi, Mr. G, RKJD3930, Expired Crazy Person, Shinsei, Nuclear, Doodle Dog 222, Aaron 0729, Danny Gaming Central, Windows Vista's fan-made content, GDVV Yoso, Linhard von Hevering, Disco Fama, Cassie Channel, Drop D Mike 75, Virtual Tomato, Daniel Castillo 1262, Anton 3669, Smuggy, Guy 112, Young Smoky VP7, Flame 765, Peanut Brown of Gallery, Gorpasaurus, BFDI Macaron, Stephen Hafner, Night Vision 101, PDX, Wilbur, Mogo Mogo Boat, Stuffy Ant, Rich 229, Jehojim, Magnus and Larslot, Trifector, Tibby, Hippopotamus, Levi Strux, Blessed Tiger, Yanni the Duck, Trader Mo, Mevins 2001, Display Changer, B Major 2003, Sir Musty, Belandor, Cinder CC, Jade Avery, Thinky Reiki, Ingenio TM, Tesseract, JubeTube, Jameson Pageson, Keep, and Christian Flattery Sequel Edition. But anyways, drive-ons for Smash, and I'll see you guys next time.